Wondering if you could expand on your comment with respect to the effect on public confidence by real or perceived conflict of interest, particularly around the cabinet table. What effect do those conflicts have on Canadians' confidence in their democratic institutions?
I think the major effect results from the fact that what people hear is from the media, and very often the media will report it in a way that will actually put something in favor or against. The problem is that people will make themselves a decision based on what they see in the media. So it's the perception that is worse than sometimes the actual act himself.
Minute and now has to call in the Canadian Armed Forces to actually clean up his mess. Our armed forces will get the job done. Of that I have no doubt. But this Liberal government will still have to answer for their incompetence. When will the Prime Minister table a plan to make vaccinations available to all Canadians?
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Well, thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I share the optimism and the ability of our armed forces to be part of our vaccination strategy, which I have to say, Mr. Speaker, has been integrated very early on. And we're so grateful to Major General Danny Fortin for being embedded in the Public Health Agency of Canada to help with the logistics of deploying vaccines across the country, working closely with provinces and territories, Mr. Speaker. This is a Team Canada approach and an integrated approach at that across all departments of government. I want to thank the Canadian Armed Forces for their assistance.
The Honourable Member for Selkirk Interlake Eastman.
Mr. Speaker, the Prime Minister promised Canadians 250,000 doses of vaccines would be made available by now, but he hasn't delivered one single dose. He put all his hope in the CanSino vaccine, and of course that deal fell through, and there was no plan B. He has literally had to call in the Army to fix all the problems caused by all the Liberals' dithering and delays. Now the Prime Minister says vaccines won't make it into the arms of Canadians until September. September isn't good enough. Why should the Canadians believe the Prime Minister now when he has misled them so many times already?
Oh, Minister.
The member opposite doesn't want to listen to me, but maybe he'll listen to the CEO of Moderna, who said, you know, Canada's early orders meant it was well positioned to receive early doses. This is the reality, Mr. Speaker, that the member opposite and his colleagues don't want to face, that in fact we were prepared and we have the best portfolio, Mr. Speaker, 7 promising candidates, 4 of them under regulatory review. When the vaccines are safe, we'll be delivering them to Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Battleford's Lloydminster.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. We know seniors have sacrificed a lot this year. Many have faced isolation from their loved ones, and those living in long-term care have been particularly hit hard by COVID-19. They deserve certainty and clarity from their government, yet there's still no clear plan on testing or vaccines. While other countries have indicated that mass vaccine distribution will begin in the coming months, the Prime Minister is talking about September for Canadians. Mr. Speaker, are seniors going to have to wait until September 2021 to see their grandchildren?
Well, thank you very much, Mr. Speaker. And now who's putting out misrepresenting information to Canadians? It would be the member opposite, because in fact she knows that that's not what the Prime Minister said. He said by September 70% of Canadians will be vaccinated. He didn't say that it will be until September. In fact, we know, Mr. Speaker, that we are very close. Canadians can be assured that when a vaccine is approved for safety here in Canada, we'll be deploying it, Mr. Speaker. Canadians are well positioned to receive vaccines, and we are thrilled with the ability to be able to provide them to Canadians.
The Honourable Member for Hamilton Centre.
The Liberals have watched $450 billion be sent offshore without a single CRA investigation resulting in a conviction. This is on top of the 900 Canadians named in the Panama Papers who've also evaded prosecution by hiding their wealth offshore. But when the New Democrats proposed closing tax loopholes and bringing in a wealth tax, the Liberals voted it down. Mr. Speaker, why does this government insist on protecting the ultra-wealthy from paying their fair share while leaving thousands of Canadians and small businesses on the brink of financial ruin from COVID?
Minister.
Monsieur le Président, lutter contre les fraudeurs Mr. Speaker, fighting tax fraudsters in Canada and abroad is a priority for our government. As far as international tax evasion is concerned, the agency's efforts are bearing fruit. Last year, there were 1,463 representations having to do with tax evasion internationally. That represented more than 1,600 taxpayers. That's compared to only 43 in 2013-14. We have invested historical amounts in this matter, and we are giving the CRA the tools it needs to do the work. And we are seeing results, Mr. Speaker. The Honourable Member for Rosemont-la-Petite-Patrie. Mr. Speaker, this afternoon, the government will be presenting an economic update with a major deficit. Historically, the Liberals and Conservatives have both cut services, and that always hurts the same people, workers, families, and the most vulnerable. But there is an alternative, making the ultra-rich pay. The NDP has been proposing taxes on the extremely high profits of some companies and individuals. Will the Liberals adopt these progressive policies, or will they be bringing in austerity policies that hurt people? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have great respect for the honourable member, and I can assure him with no uncertainty that we will do whatever it takes to continue to offer support to Canadian households and businesses to do what it takes to get them through this pandemic. On the issue of taxing the wealthy, if it's such a passion of the honourable members, I would return the question to him as to why he and his NDP colleagues oppose the Canada Child Benefit, which stops sending childcare checks to millionaires and put more money in the pockets of 9 out of 10 Canadian families. I would also ask him why his party opposed the very first measure we did when we formed government in 2015, which was to raise taxes on Canada's wealthiest 1% so we could cut them for 9 million Canadian households.
Member for Brampton East.
Mr. Speaker, Canada and India share very strong people-to-people ties. Many Indo-Canadians, particularly the 600,000 of Punjabi descent, are watching closely as hundreds of thousands of farmers are marching to Delhi in a peaceful protest. However, many of the farmers from Punjab have been met with violence from police and blocked from entry to Delhi. It is essential that people in a democratic society be allowed to protest peacefully without fear of violence in response. Can the Minister of Foreign Affairs please advise as to how Canada is expressing its concerns over this issue?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I want to thank the member for Brampton East for his very good question. I also want to acknowledge the strong people-to-people ties that unite India and Canada, both strong democracies. As the member rightfully mentioned, the freedom to protest peacefully is a fundamental right that must be respected. Canada is concerned by reports of violence that some farmers would have been met with as they march peacefully in protest. As we believe in strong dialogue, we have made diplomatic representation at senior levels, both here in Ottawa and in Delhi, to express our concerns, Mr. Speaker.
The Honourable Member.
Mr. Speaker, when the Minister of Justice introduced the assisted dying bill, he said that this bill reflects a consensus among Canadians. Yet there's not even consensus in the Liberal cabinet. The minister responsible for disability inclusion has said that assisted dying providers should not raise assisted death with persons with disabilities. Yet Liberals rejected this amendment Conservatives brought forward to committee. Will the Minister of Justice listen to his colleague and listen to persons with disabilities and make this amendment?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member for his question. Medical assistance in dying or MAID is a complex issue. It's deeply personal. Canadians have diverse and evolving views, and we did our best, Mr. Speaker, to consult them quite intensively across Canada in roundtables from coast to coast, as well as an online survey in which over 300,000 Canadians gave us their views on medical assistance in dying. Mr. Speaker, we reintroduced this legislation because it does represent a consensus in Canadian society. We need to move forward through this step to respond to the Quebec Superior Court's decision in Truchon, and we are doing just that.
Member for Fundy Royal.
Well, Mr. Speaker, there's a consensus that the government's latest made bill lacks safeguards and puts persons with disabilities at risk. Witness after witness at Justice Committee, we heard from disability advocates who say that this bill is unfair to persons with disabilities. Krista Carr of Inclusion Canada described it as our worst nightmare. I'm sure many Liberal members are also concerned about the gaps in Bill C7. Will the government allow a free vote among Liberal MPs so that they may vote against this flawed bill?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I thank the honourable member once again for his question. During those consultations, Mr. Speaker, we took great pains to listen carefully to the disability community and their advocacy, and they had a direct impact on the structure of the bill. The safeguards that are in place, Mr. Speaker, in the non-end-of-life scenario are precisely a result of the consultations that took place with representatives of groups living with disabilities. We'll continue to listen, Mr. Speaker, and we're very proud of the legislation and the compromises that it affects.
Member for Calgary Skyview.
Mr. Speaker, the right to peacefully protest is a fundamental right in a democracy. Thousands of farmers from across India, including Punjab and Haryana, have been protesting recent changes in agriculture policy. Canadians here at home with ties to Indian farmers are concerned about reports of the use of tear gas, water cannons, and batons by the authorities against the protesters. Mr. Speaker, will the Minister of Foreign Affairs comment on the issue my constituents and Canadians have been raising?
The Honourable Minister of Foreign Affairs.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for a very important question that many members of this House and many Canadians are concerned about. We are concerned about the violence that we've seen over the weekends as farmers march peacefully to Delhi. Freedom of protest peacefully, Mr. Speaker, is a fundamental right that must be respected. We believe in strong dialogue with India. That's why we made representation at senior levels over the weekend, both here in Ottawa and in Delhi, Mr. Speaker. Thank you very much.
The Honourable Member for Calgary Forest Lawn.
Canadians are concerned by the recent escalation of tensions in India between farmers and Indian authorities. Freedom of speech is fundamental to a healthy democracy, including peaceful protest. Farmers feed cities. Their hard labor is crucial to the function of any country. No farmers, no food. Authorities are using tear gas, water cannons, and baton charges to shut down the peaceful protests. People all across the globe are standing in solidarity with the farmers' right to peacefully protest. Why won't the Liberal government stand up for the freedom and democracy and comment on the ongoing situation in India? Chalo Delhi, I stand with farmers.
Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I'd like to thank the member for the very good question. As I answered before, Mr. Speaker, we are concerned, not only him, his constituents, but as other members have expressed in this House, about the reports of violence that farmers have been met as they march peacefully to Delhi. Mr. Speaker, we believe in the freedom of protest. This is a fundamental right in democracy. That's why, as I said to the member previously, that we have expressed our concerns at senior levels, both here in Ottawa and in Delhi. We believe in fundamental right of protest, Mr. Speaker. Thank you.
L'honorable député de Saint-Hyacinthe.
The Honourable Member for Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte. Mr. Speaker, it's really the theatre of the absurd. Right now, the International Trade Committee is studying the UK Free Trade Agreement. We've even heard from witnesses, like recently the Minister for International Trade. There's only one problem, Mr. Speaker. No one's seen the text of the agreement. We are trying to analyze a text that no one has read. And we're being asked to approve that agreement by the 31st of December because of Brexit. Mr. Speaker, this is becoming ridiculous. When will the government provide the text of the agreement? The Honourable Minister.
Member for that important question. It was really good to be at Trade Committee today. And as I said, our officials are working very hard to get the legal text finalized so that we can indeed share it. I will respect our processes and certainly the work of my colleagues on all sides of the House, and will endeavor to get this information to them as soon as it's available and ready. But I think the continuity agreement is really great for Canadian businesses because it provides that continuity that our businesses and predictability that they're looking for in trading with the United Kingdom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Député de Saint-Hyacinthe-Bagotte.
The Honourable Member. It's just as unclear as when it comes to the vaccine. The government is asking us to show blind trust, but it showed its true colors with previous agreements. This is the same government that would have sacrificed Quebec aluminum in CUSMA, and it's the same government that sacrificed supply managed producers 3 times in a row. It would be irresponsible to give this government a blank check. We are studying the agreement. Does the government understand that we need the text right away? The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I absolutely agree with the honourable member that the work that he does and all colleagues are extremely important. That is why I want to thank the officials here in Canada and the United Kingdom for all of their hard work. And I know that they are working as fast as they can to make sure that they get that text completed, that review completed. The continuity trade agreement with Canada and UK does this. It provides predictability and stability. And this is what businesses are looking for, particularly during this time. And our economic recovery counts on this stability in this important trading relationship with the United Kingdom. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The honourable member for Caribou, Prince George.
Mr. Speaker, you'll pardon my nervousness. I just got a text message from my wife. My daughter's water just broke, and I'm going to be a grandfather for the first time. So I completely forgot what I was going to say, but if you'll forgive me, Mr. Speaker, time and again we have asked the government for a commitment to bring 988 to Canada. Sadly, all that we've received are scripted talking points and no commitment from the minister. This isn't a partisan issue. Mental health associations are calling for it. National telecoms are calling for it. Canadians are demanding this. Minister, either you support it or you don't. Let's not give Canadians that are suffering false hope. Does the Minister of Health support a 988 national suicide hotline in Canada? And if you don't, if the Minister doesn't, just have the courage to say so.
The Honourable Minister of Health.
Thank you very much, Mr. Speaker, and I can't help but say congratulations to the member opposite, because that's pretty exciting news to break to the House of Commons. But his topic is very serious as well, and I do want to reassure him that I want to work with him on a national hotline. I've said that in this House. I will continue to do that work. I think we should find a time to sit down and talk about it, to show the member opposite the work that the department has been doing. But I fully support the premise, and I think that we can work together to make it happen more quickly.
The ancillary events and being paid to work corporate events for an organization, something that you would consider part of your investigation.
With their white paper on official languages, the Liberals are trying to buy time until the next elections, and they're ultimately taking official language communities hostage. But the Federation of Francophone and Canadian Communities and the Quebec Community Groups Network are asking for something to be done. Will the Liberals stop doing petty politics and finally present the modernization of the Official Languages Act by Christmas, before Christmas? The Honourable Minister. Thank you very much. Mr. Speaker, when I hear from my colleague who has been the critic on this file for several years, when I hear him talking about updating the OLA, I always find it surprising to see that the Conservatives seem to be showing newfound interest in official languages. It seems like they might be trying to poach votes from the Bloc Québécois. We will always be there to support official language minority communities. We will always be there to stand up and support them, and we will be working hard to ensure that we can table language reform that will lead to setting the tone for the next 50 years to protect language rights in the country.
For Calgary, Shepherd.
Speaker, truck drivers have been essential to keeping our supply lines open, but government red tape is blocking Canadian truckers from securing fast enrollment for transporting dangerous goods across the border. In-person interview sites are closed, and CBSA has no timelines for reopening. No virtual option, no rules for deeming travel by truckers for fast interviews as essential. When is the minister going to fix this unfair situation and put pressure on his American counterpart to deem travel for fast enrollment interviews as essential, or allow fast interviews to be done over Zoom?
Honourable Minister of Transport.
Mr. Speaker, I thank my colleague for the question. We'll certainly look at that, but we've been trying to do everything possible to make sure that our truckers are able to move across the border because they do represent an essential service, and they're doing a fabulous job of making sure that Canadians are being provided with all the necessary goods that we need here in Canada. But I will look into the point that he has just raised. Thank you.
The honourable member for Nickel Belt.
Mr. Speaker, every year from the 25th of November to the 10th of December, Canadians observe 60 days of activism against gender-based violence. It's an opportunity to get together to discuss and renew our commitment to end this violence. I believe men and boys can play an essential role in preventing gender-based violence. Can the Minister of Women and Gender Equality tell us about the National Action Plan and how men and boys can be encouraged to be part of the solution?
Honorable Ministre.
Mr. Speaker, my colleague from Nickel Belt is absolutely right. Men and boys play a vital role in ending gender-based violence. That's why our government's partnered with the Moose Hide campaign, Next Gen Men, Catalyst Canada, Paktuti, to name a few, so that men and boys are working on healthier relationships, so that they have the tools to be more than bystanders, online and offline, so that they can be part of the positive change that is so desperately needed. I know my colleagues here are playing important roles as mentors. They're leading by example. They're opening doors to progress in terms of pathways for employment and career development. And Mr. Speaker, we look forward to the day when we don't have to have 16 days of activism against gender-based violence.
The honourable member for Kootenay-Columbia.
Mr. Speaker, during this crisis, Service Canada locations have provided essential help to those who were in need, were closed, and critical health care visits were conducted virtually. Safe Help was a single click away. Safe Help. The problem was that many didn't have reliable broadband connection. The requirement for connectivity is about social media. It's the health and well-being of our loved ones. Mr. Speaker, will the minister commit to funding shovel-in-the-ground solutions for Kootenay-Columbians like in Yak and Castle now, not in 5 or 10 years?
Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have positive news from my colleague. As of November 9th, there's been a call for applications that's open, the single largest investment in broadband in Canada's history. Our government's put it forward. We're taking days, a matter of days, to review and assess project proposals that come forward for rapid response. For longer-term projects, there's another $1 billion set aside. The short answer is yes, Mr. Speaker. I ask him to reach out to my team and I, and we'll do what we can to help.
The honourable member for New Brunswick Southwest.
Mr. Speaker, after months and months of delays, the Liberal government finally announced its scheme to improve high-speed internet in rural communities. Unfortunately, their funding decisions will be based on service maps that are filled with inaccurate data. This is happening in Grand Manan, in communities outside of Grand Bay Westfield, and up north around Bay St. Anne. These are just a few communities in my province. And this is disqualifying many communities in New Brunswick from applying for the program today. Why have parameters been proposed that will mean many rural communities won't receive high-speed internet?
The Honourable Minister.
Mr. Speaker, I have good news for my other Conservative colleague as well. Those maps he refers to have been updated. They've been updated as of January. We continue to update them. The hexagon model is gone. I encourage him to reach out to my team and I if he has any questions about it. We've set up a
News and Greetings by Canadians for Canadians. Today's Space Cafe. Have a good day.